There comes a time in every person's life when disappearing isn't about running away. It's about coming home to who you truly are. There's a quiet art to disappearing, not from responsibility, not from people, but from the chaos that keeps us small. It is the deliberate withdrawal from the noise of the world to rediscover the music of your own soul. In a time when everyone is shouting to be seen, the wisest among us step back to think, to grow, to evolve. When the caterpillar disappears into its cocoon, the world forgets it for a while. But inside, an extraordinary transformation takes place. It dissolves, reshapes, reforms. When it returns, it no longer crawls, it flies. That's the beauty of disappearing. It's not an escape, it's evolution in motion. You see, every person who has achieved greatness has vanished for a season. They have stepped away from the crowd, away from distractions, away from applause, and have gone inward, to work, to study, to build. They return later not as who they were, but as who they decided to become. The world will not understand your silence. It will ask where you've gone. It will wonder why you stopped sharing your every move. But remember this, the most powerful transformations happen in private. When you disappear from the meaningless, you reappear in the meaningful. Take this time to cleanse your mind. Read, reflect, build new habits, reimagine your life. The person you are today is merely the raw material for the person you can become tomorrow. And you cannot sculpt a masterpiece while standing in the marketplace of noise. Here's a truth worth remembering. The greatest transformations begin when you stop announcing your plans and start living them. There's a deep wisdom in retreat. The oak tree grows silently in the forest long before it stands tall above the rest. The diamond forms under pressure long before it sparkles in the light. And so it must be with you. You must go where no one follows, into the quiet chambers of your mind, into the discipline of your own work, into the lonely hours where progress begins. Your disappearance is not the end of you. It's the beginning of who you're meant to be. When you return, you'll speak with clarity, move with purpose, and live with intention. And those who once doubted you will be silent, not because you told them who you are, but because you showed them. To disappear from the noise is to reclaim the most valuable possession a human being can own, his peace of mind. Most people are trapped in a constant stream of distractions, chasing after recognition, applause, and noise. They live with the mistaken belief that activity equals achievement, that motion means progress. But the truth is, a great deal of what passes for movement in our modern world is merely agitation without direction. To retreat from it, to deliberately step away from the constant hum of other people's opinions and expectations, is one of the most intelligent acts a person can perform. Disappearing from the noise doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities or your loved ones. It means creating a sacred distance between your inner life and the clamor of the world, so you can begin to hear yourself think again. When you decide to disappear, you are not escaping reality, you are returning to it. For years, many have been trained to respond to every sound, every vibration, every new message, as if the world might collapse without their immediate attention. And so, they drift farther and farther from their own thoughts, their own vision, their own quiet wisdom. The human mind was designed to think, to reflect, to imagine, but imagination cannot thrive in an environment of constant interruption. To disappear from the noise is to give yourself permission to think deeply once more, to ask the questions that matter, and to listen for the answers that rise from within. The man or woman who learns the art of solitude becomes powerful beyond measure. In silence, ideas are born that can change the course of a lifetime. In quiet reflection, the clutter of trivial desires falls away, and what remains is pure purpose. The great inventors, writers, leaders, and thinkers all shared one common trait. They knew how to step away. They created a space for thought, a sanctuary for growth, and they guarded it as carefully as a treasure. The world sees only their results, but it is their retreat from the noise that gave those results their strength. Disappearing also teaches humility. It reminds us that we do not have to prove our worth every moment of every day. We are not defined by the noise we make, but by the depth of what we create. When you turn down the volume of the world, you begin to notice the subtle music of your own heart. You realize that true progress is quiet, deliberate, and inward before it ever becomes visible outwardly. Every great structure begins as an unseen foundation. Every masterpiece starts as a silent vision in the mind of its creator. So must every transformation begin with withdrawal from the noise that keeps you ordinary. To disappear is not to vanish from life, it is to return to it renewed, clear, and strong. It is the conscious act of protecting your mental soil from the weeds of distraction so that your own garden may finally grow. Transformation never begins in the crowd. It begins in silence, where truth replaces illusion. In that stillness, something remarkable happens. The fog of other people's expectations starts to lift, and for the first time you can see yourself clearly. The noise of the world has a way of convincing us that we are something we are not, that we must constantly compare, compete, and conform. Yet, when the noise fades, we discover that we were never meant to imitate anyone. We were meant to become the highest version of ourselves. That journey does not require applause. It requires awareness, discipline. In solitude, in silence, the mind begins to reveal its hidden treasures. Thoughts that were once buried beneath the clutter of constant motion begin to rise. You start to see what truly matters and what was merely distraction. Most people run from silence because it confronts them with themselves. But it is precisely that confrontation that begins transformation. You cannot change what you refuse to see. And in silence, all pretenses fall away. You meet yourself as you are, without titles, without roles, without the comforting noise of activity. Only there can truth take the place of illusion. The modern world worships speed, yet transformation moves slowly. It unfolds like dawn, quietly, gradually, with the patience of nature. In silence, you begin to notice this rhythm. You stop rushing toward what you think you should be and start building what you were always meant to become. The mind, when undisturbed, has a way of guiding us toward growth, toward healing, toward clarity. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And those whispers contain more wisdom than the loudest voices of the crowd. There is a cleansing power in stillness. The noise of life often muddies the waters of thought, but in silence the sediment settles and the water becomes clear. You begin to recognize which pursuits are born of truth and which are driven by fear. You realize that transformation isn't about adding more to your life. It's about removing what no longer serves your growth. Like a sculptor chipping away at the excess stone to reveal the form within, silence allows you to chip away at illusions until only the essential remains. When truth replaces illusion, your entire perception changes. You stop chasing approval and start seeking purpose. You no longer measure success by what others can see, but by the peace that lives within you. That is the quiet revolution that takes place in the heart of every transformed person. The world may not notice at first, but over time it will. Because when a person lives from truth rather than illusion, everything about them changes. Their voice, their choices, their direction. Silence is not emptiness. It is fullness waiting to be discovered. It is the birthplace of all lasting transformation. The person you want to become already lives within you, waiting to be uncovered. Most people spend their lives searching outside themselves for answers that were always meant to be found within. They chase mentors, titles, possessions, and recognition, hoping that somewhere in those pursuits they will stumble upon the secret to becoming whole. But greatness is not discovered. It is uncovered. It has always been there, buried beneath layers of fear, doubt, and conditioning. Like a diamond hidden deep within the earth, your potential waits patiently for the courage of your effort to bring it into the light. From the moment you were born, life began shaping you with experiences, lessons, and challenges designed not to limit you, but to reveal you. Every setback has carved a little more of your character. Every disappointment has polished a little more of your strength. The person you dream of becoming is not a stranger. It is the truest version of yourself, hidden beneath the noise of what the world has told you to be. Transformation, then, is not an act of creation but of revelation. It is the gradual removal of what is false until only truth remains. When you begin to look within, you start to see glimpses of this inner self. You notice a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on the opinions of others. You feel a sense of direction that needs no validation. The world teaches us to look outward for guidance, but the wisest among us turn inward, because the mind, when calm and disciplined, contains its own compass. It knows where you must go. It knows what you must do. You only need the stillness to hear it and the courage to follow. Think of the oak tree within the acorn. No one questions that the mighty tree already exists in potential form within that tiny seed. It does not have to become something foreign. It merely has to grow into what it already is. The same is true for you. The qualities you admire in others, discipline, patience, strength, creativity, are not foreign substances to be imported from the outside world. They are dormant abilities waiting for the right environment to emerge. When you cultivate that environment through study, reflection, and consistent effort, the person you aspire to be begins to rise naturally from within. The tragedy of most lives is not that people cannot become great, but that they never believe they already possess the raw material of greatness. They look at themselves and see only limitation, forgetting that every achievement in history was born from ordinary people who simply decided to trust what was already inside them. When you understand that the person you seek is already a part of you, your work changes. It becomes a process of uncovering, refining, and expressing. The life you desire is not something to chase. It is something to awaken. You must leave behind your former self with gratitude, not regret. The past version of you was necessary. It brought you here. It carried you through lessons you didn't yet understand, mistakes you needed to make, and seasons that shaped your endurance. But the time always comes when the old self can no longer carry the weight of who you're becoming. Growth demands release. The same habits, thoughts, and beliefs that once kept you safe will one day become too small for you. And when that day arrives, you must be willing to shed them with thankfulness, not sorrow, for they serve their purpose. Every transformation requires a kind of death, the quiet ending of what no longer fits. Yet most people resist this because they have become too attached to their familiar selves. They cling to the comfort of old identities, not realizing that comfort is the enemy of evolution. The person you used to be may have survived through caution, through conformity, through fear. But the person you are becoming demands courage. You cannot carry both. To step forward, you must let go of the weight of yesterday. You cannot climb a mountain while clutching the stones of the valley. Gratitude is what turns release into wisdom. Instead of resenting the mistakes of your former self, you can thank them for their instruction. Instead of mourning lost time, you can honor the experience it gave you. Regret paralyzes, gratitude liberates. When you view your past as a teacher rather than a jailer, you open the door to transformation. Every wrong turn becomes a guidepost. Every failure becomes a stepping stone. You begin to understand that everything you once were is part of the raw material from which the new you is built. Think of the snake that sheds its skin. It does not grieve the loss. It simply knows the old layer cannot stretch with its growth. Nature provides endless reminders that renewal always follows release. The tree lets go of its leaves to make room for spring. The tide withdraws so it can return with greater strength. So must you learn the rhythm of letting go. Transformation is not about discarding yourself. It is about elevating yourself. You are not abandoning the old you. You are thanking it for getting you this far and then moving beyond it. When you let go with gratitude, you create space for expansion. The mind clears, the heart lightens, and the path ahead begins to open. The person you were yesterday prepared the ground for who you must be tomorrow. And when you walk away from that old self, do it with grace. You are not losing anything. You are returning to your potential. The past was practice for this moment. It was never meant to hold you. It was meant to teach you how to rise. True disappearance is not isolation, it's elevation. It is not the act of hiding from the world, but the quiet decision to rise above it. Many people misunderstand solitude. They see it as withdrawal, as loneliness, as the absence of life. Yet, solitude is not emptiness. It is refinement. It is the furnace in which clarity is forged and character is strengthened. When a person chooses to step away from the constant chatter of the world, they are not moving down into obscurity but up into awareness. They begin to operate from a higher plane of understanding where noise loses its hold and purpose takes its place. Elevation begins when you stop needing to be everywhere for everyone all the time. It begins when you realize that your energy is precious and that not every conversation, every opinion, every invitation deserves your attention. The truly great are not those who speak the loudest, but those who have learned when to be silent. They do not isolate themselves out of bitterness, but separate themselves out of vision. They know that to build something worthwhile, one must often climb alone for a while, far from the distractions that keep others grounded. This kind of disappearance is not about retreating into darkness, it's about finding light. When you elevate yourself mentally and spiritually, you start to see the world differently. Petty arguments lose their power, superficial pursuits lose their charm, and validation from others loses its necessity. You become anchored within yourself. You move from reaction to intention. You stop trying to prove and begin to improve. This is the quiet transformation that takes place when one steps above the noise. It is a shift from living to impress to living to express the best that resides within. The mountain climber does not look back at the village below in contempt. He looks down in gratitude, knowing that his climb was made possible by the strength he gained on the ground. But he also knows that to reach the summit, he must keep climbing. In the same way, your disappearance from the familiar is not an act of rejection. It is an act of ascension. You are not cutting yourself off from the world. You are connecting yourself more deeply to its truth. The higher you go, the clearer the air, the wider the view, and the smaller the noise becomes. Isolation closes you off, elevation opens you up. The difference lies in purpose. The person who isolates does so out of fear. The one who elevates does so out of faith. Faith that silence brings understanding, that solitude brings power, that inner growth brings outer results. When you disappear to elevate, you do not lose connection, you gain perspective. You begin to live not below life's noise, but above it, guided by purpose, strengthened by peace, and lifted by quiet certainty. Growth demands privacy. Seeds don't sprout in the spotlight. Everything that grows, grows first in silence, hidden from view, nourished by darkness and patience. We often forget that nature's greatest miracles unfold where no one can see them. The roots take hold before the tree can stand. The embryo forms before the child takes its first breath. So too must the human mind develop in private before its results can be revealed in public. The world has taught us to broadcast every step, to announce every move, to seek approval for every effort. But true growth does not need witnesses. It needs stillness, consistency, and faith in the unseen process that time alone can mature. When a person decides to grow, they enter a sacred contract with themselves. It is not for display, it is for development. You do not plant a seed and dig it up every day to show others how it's doing. You leave it undisturbed, trusting that the hidden work beneath the surface will one day bear fruit. In the same way, your dreams, your plans, and your transformation require protection from premature exposure. Too much attention, too early, can drain the quiet energy that progress needs to survive. Growth is fragile in its infancy, and the careless opinions of others can trample it before it ever takes root. Privacy is not secrecy, it is stewardship. It means guarding your inner work from unnecessary interference, giving your ideas time to ripen before you present them to the world. Many people fail not because they lack ability, but because they lack the patience to grow unseen. They seek validation instead of mastery. They confuse visibility with value. Yet, all lasting success is built on the quiet foundation of preparation. What people call overnight success is merely the moment when hidden effort becomes visible. There is strength in the quiet seasons of your life, the days when no one notices, when no one claps, when progress feels invisible. Those are the moments when your roots deepen, when your mind sharpens, when your will hardens. That privacy is your training ground, and it must not be rushed. The man who learns to work in silence becomes unstoppable when he finally speaks. His confidence does not come from the crowd's applause, but from the knowledge of his own preparation. The woman who grows quietly becomes unshakable when her time arrives, for she has built her foundation far from the eyes of those who might doubt her. So protect your process. Cherish the hidden work. Do not rush to reveal what is still taking shape. The seed does not need the sun to applaud it, it only needs time and nourishment. One day, when the moment is right, your growth will rise into the light, strong enough to withstand the gaze of the world because it was first strengthened in the calm privacy of your own making. The world respects mystery. It notices when you reappear with purpose. In an age where everyone is trying to be seen, the one who steps back becomes unforgettable. There is something magnetic about a person who does not rush to explain themselves, who disappears quietly and returns transformed. The world cannot resist wondering where they went, what they learned, how they changed. Silence creates curiosity, and curiosity creates respect. The truth is, when you no longer chase attention, attention begins to follow you. The individual who vanishes to improve, to build, to grow, carries with them an invisible authority when they return, because the results of their labor speak louder than any explanation ever could. Mystery is not manipulation, it is mastery. It is the quiet understanding that growth happens in solitude and that wisdom is cultivated away from the noise. Those who live constantly in the public eye, who display every move before it matures, lose the depth that mystery provides. But the one who is willing to go unseen, who retreats with intention, develops an inner substance that cannot be faked. When such a person reemerges, their presence alone commands attention. The world senses that something has changed, that this is not the same person who once sought its approval. Disappearance followed by purpose has always marked the lives of great individuals. The inventors, the writers, the thinkers, and the leaders each withdrew for a season. They closed the door, they studied, they worked, they refined themselves. And when they returned, their words carried more weight, their vision more clarity, their actions more power. The world did not respect them because they shouted, it respected them because they emerged from silence with something to say. When your time away is spent in meaningful growth, your reappearance becomes an event. There is power in not being fully known. Mystery protects your momentum. It allows your progress to unfold without interference. When people can't predict your next move, they can't limit it. When they can't label you, they can't confine you. You are free to evolve beyond their expectations. This is why the person who values mystery often achieves what others cannot. They are not performing for the audience, they are preparing for their purpose. Their absence is not neglect, it is investment. And that investment yields a return the world can't help but notice. When you reappear with purpose, you no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. Your work, your confidence, your calm certainty do it for you. The same people who once overlooked you will pause, sensing something different, something unspoken yet undeniable. That is the power of mystery. It makes the world listen before you even speak. It teaches that silence, when used with intention, is not emptiness but preparation. To step away for growth is to command attention upon your return, not through noise, but through undeniable presence. Let your absence be your preparation and your return be your revelation. There is a quiet dignity in stepping away when the world least expects it, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Most people are afraid to pause. They believe that to step back is to fall behind. Yet in truth, the most powerful movements in life often begin in stillness. The archer pulls the arrow backward before it can be released forward. The tide withdraws before it surges to shore. The same is true of personal growth. You must retreat before you advance. Your absence, when used purposefully, becomes the forge in which your next self is crafted. It is the time when you gather strength, refine vision, and restore clarity. The mind, when removed from constant stimulation, begins to work on a higher frequency. Ideas connect, patterns emerge, a deeper understanding forms. What once seemed confusing starts to make sense. The absence becomes a sacred workshop where you build the unseen parts of your new self. It is where you quietly prepare the next version of you that will one day walk confidently back into the world. The return is what reveals the work that silence has done. When you re-enter life after a season of disciplined absence, you do not need to explain where you have been. Your presence tells the story. Your composure, your focus, your peace, these speak louder than words. The world begins to notice that something within you has changed, that you no longer react as you once did, that you move with purpose instead of urgency. That is the mark of one who has used absence as preparation. They do not come back seeking recognition. They return radiating quiet strength. Every artist, every thinker, every visionary knows this rhythm, the retreat and the return. The preparation and the revelation. They withdraw to study, to reflect, to realign their purpose, and when they emerge, they bring with them something new to give. Your own life follows the same law. You cannot reveal what you have not prepared, and you cannot prepare while constantly performing. The wisdom of absence lies in knowing that stepping away is not quitting, it is strategizing. It is the deliberate act of gathering yourself so that when you reappear, you are not the same. The return becomes your declaration without words, your revelation without speech, your proof that the time away was not lost but invested. Time alone refines your vision, character, and conviction. It is in solitude that the mind sharpens, the heart steadies, and the spirit learns to stand without applause. The modern world fears being alone because it has mistaken noise for connection. Yet every person who has ever achieved clarity has done so in the company of silence. When you spend time alone, you meet yourself in a way the crowd never allows. You begin to see what truly drives you, what truly matters, and what must change if you are to rise above mediocrity. Vision does not come in chaos, it comes in quiet. The future reveals itself only to those who are willing to turn down the distractions long enough to listen. Time alone gives birth to new ideas, but more than that, it gives you the strength to believe in them. When you are constantly surrounded by others, your vision becomes diluted by their doubts and opinions. In solitude, you learn to hear your own voice, the one that has been drowned out by years of external noise. That voice will tell you what you were born to do if only you give it room to speak. Character, too, is forged in aloneness. It is easy to appear disciplined when others are watching, but true discipline is born when no one is there to see you. The man who can keep his promises to himself when there is no reward and no witness becomes unbreakable. Time alone reveals the truth of who you are, not the image you present to the world. It strips away the false layers until only integrity remains, and then comes conviction, the unshakable belief in your chosen path. It is not built in the echo of applause, but in the silence of persistence. When you spend enough time alone with your dreams, they stop being fantasies and start becoming responsibilities. You begin to feel accountable to the vision that came to you in solitude. It becomes your mission, not your wish. That is the gift of being alone. It does not isolate you, it strengthens you. It refines the eyes that see, the mind that decides, and the heart that endures. Time alone is not emptiness. It is the workshop of greatness. You cannot build a new life while clinging to an old identity. The person you once were cannot lead you where you are meant to go. Growth demands that you release the version of yourself that was built for survival, not for success. The mind, if left unchanged, will continue to repeat its patterns, building the same results over and over, To construct a new life, you must first clear away the remnants of the old one. The habits, the beliefs, the excuses that once kept you safe but now keep you small. It is not an easy process, for the old identity will fight to stay alive. But every breakthrough begins with a burial, and every transformation begins with surrender. The greatest mistake a person can make is trying to carry yesterday's mindset into tomorrow's opportunities. The two cannot coexist. Just as you cannot fill a new cup without emptying the old, you cannot receive the life you desire without letting go of the identity that no longer serves you. The moment you decide to change, you will face resistance from within. A voice that whispers that you are fine where you are, that change is dangerous, that comfort is safety. But safety is the slow death of potential. You must be willing to step into uncertainty, to trade the known for the possible, and to trust that who you are becoming is worth more than who you have been. A new life is not something you stumble into, it is something you build deliberately. You design it thought by thought, habit by habit, day by day. And as you do, the old identity begins to dissolve. You start responding differently, thinking differently, moving differently. The world around you begins to shift, not because it has changed, but because you have. Every new action reinforces the new self until eventually the old one no longer fits. This is the secret of all transformation. You must become willing to let go before you can rise. The person you dream of being is waiting on the other side of your old habits, your old fears, your old story. Letting go is not loss, it is liberation. It is the clearing of space so something greater can be built. You cannot hold on to who you were and become who you are meant to be at the same time. Transformation begins not with the world, but within the individual who dares to step away from it. The act of disappearing is not an escape. It is a return to strength, to truth, to the quiet power that lives inside every human being. When you withdraw from the noise, you begin to hear the steady rhythm of your own purpose. When you stop explaining yourself to the crowd, you finally start listening to the voice that has been guiding you all along. Every moment spent in silence becomes an investment in clarity. Every day of solitude becomes a rehearsal for greatness. The world may not understand your absence, but it will recognize your return. And when you reemerge, refined, focused, certain, you will no longer seek approval, because you will have built your life upon understanding instead of opinion. This journey is not for the impatient. It is for those who value depth over display, purpose over popularity, substance over spectacle. You will have to let go of your former self with gratitude, protect your growth with privacy, and build your vision in silence until it is strong enough to speak for itself. The process will test you, shape you, and ultimately reveal you. One day, the world will ask where you went. Let your life be the answer. Let your results be the evidence of the unseen hours, the quiet mornings, the disciplined nights. For the truest transformation does not announce itself, it arrives. Calmly, confidently, unmistakably. And when it does, the noise that once distracted you will fade into insignificance, replaced by the quiet certainty of a life lived with purpose. So step away. Go inward, begin your unseen work. The world will still be here when you return, but you will not be the same.